On this episode of Locked On Lightning, Nick Paul is back. And what moves do the Lightning need to make going forward? We talk all about that and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'd just like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for making us your first watch of the day, whenever or wherever you are starting it. On this episode, we are talking about Nick Paul signing a contract extension, 7 years, over $21 million. We'll get back to that. Talk about, is this a good deal or not? I think it's a good deal. We also talk about what other moves the Lightning are going to make going forward because, listen, they're far from done. So here we go. The offseason is great. I love this time of year. I think I said it either on this show or Locked On NHL or on the crossover with the Locked On Avalanche guys. The NHL offseason, I think, is one of my most favorite parts of the year other than the playoffs. And I guess the trade deadline, but that's only that's like a week or so. So I really didn't think that we were going to get a Nick Paul deal done this quickly. I thought the Lightning were going to sit back, kind of contemplate their options going forward, maybe see how the draft goes. Like I said on the last episode, the Lightning getting a first-round draft pick for the first time in 2 years. So, that's always helpful. But Julian Breeze-Boss, Lightning GM, didn't waste any time and rewarding Nick Paul with a 7-year contract worth $3.15 million AAV. That equates to a little bit over the 22, 21 mark. But totally deserving. And I get to steal for back and forth. Third line checking line that one was a huge part of Lightning winning not one, two cups. And a guy that was looking for it. But it isn't what we were. And so Julian Breeze-Boss, in his infinite wisdom, goes out, not a lot was known of Nick Paul and what kind of player he was going to be coming in when he was playing in the first couple of I thought, this who's going to play physical, at least there's that. But you didn't really what kind of production you were going to get from Nick Paul. And I'm going to say that very conservatively because Nick Paul, being offensively, it was great, and it was very unexpected, and I think that is why it made it that much greater. And so in 21 games of the Lightning, hit 5 goals and 14 points, plus minus of over 4, averaged about 14 minutes a game. And yeah, you really don't expect Nick Paul, I guess, like I said, coming into a situation, within the same division. So you're sort of familiar with some of the opponents that you're going to be playing. And hockey is hockey in terms of fluidity. It all really what happens and really what's an obstacle for certain players coming into a new situation is a matter of meshing that playing style and having that chemistry with others. And really, I thought, and I said this to the listener, the Lightning were searching, and so much was made of that third line with Goodrow, Coleman, Gord. And really, when I saw Nick Paul not only play during the regular season, but during the playoffs, I saw a lot of the physicality that we got from Gord and Goodrow, as well as some of that offensiveness too, as well. And those things go hand in hand with him. So really, to get him, and maybe his age had a little bit of effect on this as well. And when he comes out and he speaks to the press, I'm sure we'll know more about the deal. But 7 years at over 22 is, in my opinion, and I saw some tweets reacting to it, saying that this wasn't, maybe he was not going to play to the full length, and what they meant, like the value, his play wasn't going to measure up to the value of the contract. And the back part of that, here's the thing: the Lightning don't need Nick Paul to go out there and play, and score 20 plus goals a year. He's never scored more than 16. That being this year, split between Ottawa and Tampa. But if he could come out on a nightly basis, play on that third line, and progressively, probably as he gets a little older, like I said, he's 26 years old, and this is stretched out over 7 years. So when this contract ends, he's going to be 33. He's still going to be in the prime of his career. It's not like this contract's going to end, he's going to be in his late 30s. No, that's not what this is. That's not what's going to happen. But this is beneficial, obviously, to Nick Paul, because I feel like going for a guy like this who has been on a team such as Ottawa, who hasn't, let's face it, they haven't really played well at all. Uh, really throughout, the last, I would say, 7 years or so. So coming down to Tampa, that definitely gives you a whole lot more motivation to sign a long-term deal. And I think Nick Paul is very well aware, and I'm sure the Lightning front office, Julian Brees boss, made it very clear that we want to bring you back, but and we value you as a player. So we're going to give you this, over AAV, because a lot of players these days are looking for that higher annual average. Whereas I feel like a guy like Nick Paul just wants to be in a place for a very long time and win. And he has that in Tampa. So, like I said, this contract, this 7-year deal, is very, very important, I think, for Nick Paul, and as well as obviously for the Lightning, because let's say he doesn't play up to par, but he still has a lot of value. Let's say the Lightning are having an off season at some point down the road, because listen, we all know this team is going to be competitive, but there's going to be a hiccup season. There's always one, regardless of what team you are. We've seen it from certain franchises over the years, where it looks like they're going to start a rebuild, and really all it turns out to be was a hiccup, and they're right back at it. We're probably going to see it from Chicago this year, because let's face it, they haven't been good at all over the last couple of years, and people are starting to think, oh, rebuild. But I think, once they start to get everybody back together and start to figure things out, I think they'll be fine. But obviously, go listen to Lock On Blackhawks with that. But really, that freedom and that AAV, that 3.15 is going to be huge for the Lightning if they choose to eventually move him. Now, we don't know the details. I haven't seen the details just yet. If there's a no movement clause or anything such as that, I would assume that there isn't. And if it is, he probably has a list of teams that he doesn't want to be moved to, and it's a very small group of teams, or vice versa, teams that he would be open to being traded to. But I would imagine that was probably one of the stipulations of giving him that long-term deal was, listen, we're going to give you the long-term deal. We're going to give you the security. We're going to give you the money for what you're worth. But we need to have that flexibility to be able to move you if we need to do so. And yeah, so if I had to grade this right now in the moment, because obviously this could change down the road, he could either get a ton better, outperform his contract, or he could, not play so well and underperform. But I think if we get really what we saw from Nick Paul this year, if we get, uh, I would say, if we got about 80 games from him, 16 goals. If we get a little bit about what we saw from him this season as a whole, obviously that plus minus is going to get a lot better over time because a majority of those games were played up in Ottawa, so not so good defense there. But if we get 16 goals, 16 assists, 32 points, a little bit something in that area on a third line checking line from Nick Paul, I think, in the long run, from what we've seen him do and that ability for him to score at any point in time during a game, I think that's going to be huge. Let us know down in the comments what you think of this contract. Do you think that in the next 7 years, I know that's a little way down the road. We're just on day one of this contract. How do you think that this is going to go? Do you think that the Lightning got him for a steal? Do you think he should have gotten more? I think if he went to free agency, probably would have gotten more from another team. But you know what? Like I said, he wants to win, and that shows his commitment by taking a little bit, probably less than he maybe would have gotten in the free agent market. So we're going to continue talking about the moves that the Lightning should or should not make in the coming weeks with the draft coming up. We're not going to get into that just yet. I'm going to hold off onto that until the next episode, but we're going to talk about really the other looming questions that are surrounding his team. Now that Nick Paul's deal got done, the Lightning still have to sign a couple of guys or let a couple of guys go. Most notably, the big name is Alex Killorn. Spoke about that in the last episode. We'll talk about that. And then later on, we'll wrap up the show talking about your comments from the last video. We're going to do that this offseason. That's a new thing I want to do. Sort of a reactionary to the comments section. So if you want to post any questions, comments, stuff for me to talk about on the show, please post below. Please go ahead and do that. And of course, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But first, I want to talk about our first sponsor of the day, and that is BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's NHL playoffs, which are over, and Major League Baseball, which is still pretty much in the swing of things. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcast news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, MMA, boxing, golf, everything. If you want to bet on it, they probably have the odds up for it. So head to the website today. Use your mobile device or your laptop to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online where the game starts. So, yeah, I just want to remind all of you. I've seen from the stats that some of you are watching. We're getting a ton of views on videos, and I really, really appreciate that. But go ahead and subscribe so you can keep up to date on all the episodes when they drop, and hit that notification bell. Please go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Really helps the page grow over time. And if you're listening to us on an audio platform, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're available wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. That means Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, wherever they have them, we are there. And go ahead and follow us on our social media pages at LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as Locked_Lightning on Instagram. I'm on Twitter at DankyDank, DENKYD8NK. Love hearing from all of you. I will be tweeting a lot over the next couple of weeks. Usually during the regular season, I'm somewhat quiet. Depends on what's going on with the team. But ton to talk about, ton to discuss. Like I said, one of my favorite times of the year, if not the favorite time of the year. The only downside, obviously, is that there are no games going on. So moving into the other conversation that kind of, I feel I'm very, very confident that the Lightning are going to reach a deal with Andre Palat. I'm not so much worried about that. I don't think that it's a matter of if he comes back. It's just a matter of what the Lightning are going to have to do in terms of moving pieces to make 1-8 come back. But having said that, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a reasonably high number for Palat, just because of what he means to this team and to this franchise. and also what he did over the postseason. He had a phenomenal postseason, and really, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because I also felt, and I spoke, excuse me, I spoke about this on the episode, on the last episode, where he, I feel like he's in the same boat as what we saw from Nick Paul. I don't think we're going to see that high of a number in terms of 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 contract length. Remember, he is 31, so I would imagine we're probably going to see a deal from him in the, I would say maybe 4, maybe 5, I think if we're pushing it. I think 5 would probably be a good number. You know, that would be his 36th year. Um, so, his last salary over the last couple of years was 26 and a half for 5 years. That comes out just to about an average of 5 or 6, depending on what year you're looking at it. Um, I think we're probably gonna look at something a little bit like that, maybe a little bit of bump. Like I said, most likely another piece or so is gonna have to be moved, even if, the Lightning do choose to go to some of their minor league guys, which I have stated tons of times I am a huge supporter of. Lightning, yes, their farm system isn't exactly top tier compared to some of the other teams in the National Hockey League. But at the same time, they do have very good, high quality players. Cal Foote, who has spent a significant amount of time at the NHL level, Alex Barre Boulet, who's another one. He won a cup last year in the with the Lightning. So we have seen it. We have seen these guys and other players as well. Darren Radish, another player who comes to mind. So there are players in this minor league system who Jamel Smith, another one. Not saying Jamel Smith is going to be, a suitable replacement for Andre Palat if he chooses not to resign. But what I'm saying is that there is options at the AHL level up in Syracuse if need be. And all you're doing is doing yourself and your players a disservice if you're keeping guys up there too long. Um, so looking at the Andre Palat situation, like I said, I would imagine, his last contract was 26 and a half, like I said, over 5. I think we're going to see something a little bit bumped up than that. I would say maybe 27, maybe 30 over 5. I know that sounds like a crazy number. You're probably asking yourself, how are they going to afford this? Well, it really starts with Alex Killorn, and then you're going to have to get a little bit creative going forward with that because and I heard an interesting suggestion, and I'll save that for the end of the segment. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack. Well, not a flack, but I'm definitely going to get a lot of comments in the comment section for this episode for what I'm going to say later. But it has to do with Nikita Kucherov. So Alex Killorn, his name has been brought up in trade talk over the last couple of years quite a bit, and rightfully so. He's 32 years old now. Had a phenomenal year. During 2020 when Stamkos was out for a significant amount of time. Almost hit I thought if the season kept going on and wasn't, paused because of COVID, I thought he had a good chance at that point in time to hit. Off the top of my head, I think I said at the time that with the pace he was going, even though maybe the numbers didn't really dictate it in time, I really thought that the way the puck was bouncing in his favor, I really thought that he could have hit the 40 goal mark at some point or at that point in time. But unfortunately, you would have figured from that he would have had a significantly better season going forward. And you haven't really seen, I mean, you've seen Alex Killorn play well. I mean, he has done a significantly good job and made a huge contribution to this team. But it's not what you really thought what the progression was going to be. So looking at 2019, 2020 through 68 games played, he had 26 goals. That was a career high for him as well. And I kind of figure at age 30 at that time, you kind of, at least I did, and I'm sure some people do as well. I kind of figured that at age 30, yet you set a career high in goals, and you're at least to me, I was saying to myself, okay, he's figured it out. He's found his niche. He's starting to really look at the game a certain way to where he's able to find the tricks and all that stuff. And I kind of figured I wasn't saying I wasn't expecting the next season for him to come out and score, 30 goals or whatsoever. No, or put up the same numbers. But it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we saw this in the postseason as well. And he had a good season this year too. I just feel like there are certain times with Killorn at least where he's very hot and cold. He goes through very long stretches of times, and I kind of got on Andre Palat for this during the regular season, but I feel like things are they're a little different because they play different positions. Killorn's likes to go down low. Um, he shuffles between the wing and the center position, where Palat's mostly on the wing with Stamkos. Um, I just feel like there's too many times, and this is no criticism towards Killer at all. There are too many times where the game, in a way, where things aren't going well with the first line. Um, the only reason I say this because we've seen Killer do it before is that he's always for the last few years or so in certain spots, especially during the 2019-2020 run. Um, he has been that guy at certain points in the game to kickstart things for this Lightning team, especially early on in the game, where really what it came down to is, and I'm not going to get too much into this, but the Lightning get off to their slow starts, and all it takes is a guy like Killer to sit up in front, which he does such a great job of doing, to get that cheap goal or whatever, that lucky bounce up in front, to get things going for this Lightning team. And we haven't really seen that as often. Yeah, he scored 25 goals, 59 points this year. That's fantastic. But I feel like the goals haven't really come in situations where they were meaningful in a way. And obviously a goal is a goal, and every goal counts, but sometimes it doesn't help if, Lightning are down 4-0, and just because we're talking about him, Alex Killorn scores a goal with a minute and a half left. That doesn't really help. I mean, it adds a little bit of momentum, just a tiny bit, but not too much going into the next game. Um, but I think that he plays well enough, and obviously he's the logical guy to probably get moved just because of his contract. He's in the last year of it. He's making 4.5, which is which is a good, like, tolerable number, as well as when you look at his skill set, and obviously him as a center and being able to flex out to the wing. A lot of teams are looking for that down the middle, especially down the middle, and really, I think that's what makes him so alluring, especially his physicality, and unfortunately, he's the odd man out. I mean, there's really no other player on this team on the offensive side of things that you look at, to where really you could keep Killer and give away or give up someone else. I mean, I can't really look at another player. I'm looking at it right now. There's really not another player on this team, with a contract that is as favorable as his, where a team, if they're not in love with him, if they want to do a test run with Alex Killorn this season or at the trade deadline, I would prefer the Lightning get this done during the summer so they could just focus on, you know, getting this team together during the regular season and seeing what they got, and then they could make a decision. Not like just, oh, Alex Killorn, let's see how he does. Maybe we'll hold on to him. And then on the other side of that, also, if Killorn has a great season, well, oh crap, now we got to pay him or we're going to lose him for nothing. So I think it's better now to get him for a mid-round draft pick, this offseason. I'd rather do it also at preferably at the draft, just because, or prior to the draft, because it allows the Lightning, like I stated on last episode, and I've been alluding to this one as well. It allows the Lightning to just take a step back in the summer, as well as the team as a whole, just the players, and assess what they have, and kind of get themselves ready mentally, going into the preseason. and going into camp and going into the regular season, because I think that's what the Lightning need now. I think it wasn't just mental, just wasn't physical fatigue that this team had during the playoffs, but it was definitely mental fatigue that played into that. So definitely, I think keeping Killorn as much as you want to, and kind of holding back to see what you could get for him going forward after the draft. I think, understandable, but at the same time, I think you're kind of doing yourself a disjustice by holding on to him, and eventually over time it'll become a distraction. So right before I get into the comments, want to just throw out a little feeler right there to all of you. See what you think. Um, and we'll throw it in the comment section. What do you think? A listener and I were going back and forth today. We were talking about who could possibly be on the move in the next couple of years. Not saying he's one of them, but Steven Stamkos is a UFA after 23, 24. And so is Belmar, so is Perry. And then you have Boulay and Maroon coming off the books as well. And excuse me, Perry and Belmar are free agents after this season, so we have one more year left with them. But one player, and because it was such, and I understand he was injured, and it's tough to go through an entire playoffs with the injuries, especially the ones he had. But a very disappointing end to the postseason, and just very, at times, questionable decisions made on the ice. At what point do the Lightning in their future, I'm not saying this year, I'm saying not saying next year, maybe during the offseason between 24, 25 or going into 24, 25, because let's face it, I think Steven Stamkos is going to be in Tampa for life. Let's face it. He's the lifeblood of this franchise. He's the face of the franchise. He's the captain. I think you got to keep him around. He's a lifer. But for the player that I'm about to say, and like I said, throw in your 2 cents into the comment section. I know I don't have to ask, but at what point, given some of the things in terms of body language, in terms of performance in certain situations, um, at what point do the Tampa Bay Lightning sit down and have the conversation about being traded with Nikita Kucherov? So we're going to end things and by talking about the comments, as I just, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot about that Kucherov comment. But that was an interesting point made to me, because on the last episode, I spoke about how it was funny. There was a Lightning fan online that spoke about, trade Vazzy, get that money off the books, and that's ludicrous. But goalies, I feel like, are such a important part, obviously, of the playoff run. But a guy like Kucherov, there are certain situations when he's come distant where you could see he's kind of not as engaged as you would like to be, or involved in the game while he's on the ice. So, especially with him not being able to stay healthy, which has been frustrating, because when he is healthy, he's one of the best wingers in the National Hockey League. So looking at your comments from the last episode, and I think I'm gonna end every episode like this, going over the comments, just addressing each here and there. And I'm going to read them out. So the first one that I saw, and we're going from the most recent and then going back. So the first comment is from Alex Nelson. Ruda isn't making anything more than $2 million AAV on a free agent deal, largely a replacement level NHL defenseman. Killorn for a second seems like a fair deal for a 40-50 point guy. If a fourth or a fifth is the best offer, move him at the deadline instead. Not going to talk about Ryan McDonough, but he goes on or he or she goes on to talk about Ryan McDonough, because I think I'm going to stay firmly pat on my position that the Lightning should not trade Ryan McDonough or move him for anything. I don't care, unless they're getting Cal McCarr back. But with the Ruda deal with $2 million AAV, for me with Ruda at least, I you know what? It's and I don't know if I made it clear in the last episode. For me, and I guess I didn't, it's not so much about money with Ruda because I feel like Jan Ruda, yes, he's valuable. He's a solid defenseman, but the way Cooper has played him on that first line and what he's contributed, I don't think that Jan Ruda is a first line defenseman. I would have rather have seen what we saw a couple of seasons ago with Bogosian and Hedman on that first line. I thought those two played very well, especially during the playoffs and the bubble. I would have rather have seen Ruda on that third line with Sergachev. Now, if we're paying Ruda first line defenseman money, whether that is three, what because listen, he's 31, he's probably going to ask for more than 2 million AAV. I would assume probably two and a half, maybe three. And he can make the case, or his agent, his representatives can make the case. Well, he has contributed to two, he was on 2 cup runs, and yeah, and part of a potential third. But the NHL is evolving, and Jan Rota, simply put, does not have that offensive capability, I think, on the for a D-man in today's NHL, regardless of what line. I feel like the Lightning need to start getting in the mode of having every D-man on every line, except Ryan McDonough, which I feel like Ryan McDonough's shot blocking is very vital to the defensive part of this team, which is why I look the other way with that. But if you look at and as well as Zach Bogosian, it doesn't hurt you to have at least two out of the three lines have at least one guy that is that grizzled sandpaper guy, because you can't have obviously everyone in a perfect world unless this is a video game. You can't have every defenseman scoring goals, scoring points consistently on a nightly basis. Jan Ruda, for me, if you have Zach Bogosian and Ryan McDonough, I look at it this way. I look at Jan Ruda as I wouldn't take anything more than maybe, two on a shortened deal, just because of his issues with with injuries in recent years. Um, 31 years old, yes, but in defensive years, that's probably 34, 35. I am contradicting myself a little bit with McDonough with that, but like I said, it's a different scenario for different players. But with Jan Ruda, I think there needs to be a serious conversation with him, and really be frank with him and say, listen, um, we'll give you one and a half, two, but for 2 years, and you go like that, because for a guy who has missed as many games for him as he has, and really only is really a one-sided, especially when you have Cal Foot waiting in the wings, I don't see a reason as to why you let him walk. And I don't think it would be that big of adjustment, like I said earlier in the episode, where Cal Foot has been at the NHL level. He's had enough time at the NHL level to be able to know how to conduct himself, to what he needs to do, and he has that capability of scoring. He's matured enough on the defensive end where he could handle high pressure situation, odd man rushes. Uh, I think the offensive side of things will come in time, but that really that will come if he gets the time that he needs on the ice. We saw with Sergachev, he had the defensive part down pat, uh, and then you started to see, especially before his newest contract, his offensive side of things really started to blossom, and I think the same could be said for Cal Foot. Um, so that's what I think about Jan Ruda with that. Um, and then I'm not going to go over all the comments, but I'm just going over some of the ones that really stuck out to me. Um, from, I hope I'm pronouncing this, Lessa McMahon. I think Killer has to go if we want to keep Pally and Paul. In my way of seeing it, if we have to have Pally, they should have never have gotten rid of Gordo. We really could have used him this year. Killer dodged the bullet big time, and now it's time for him to be the one. I agree with you, Lessa. I'm going to call you Lisa just because I feel like that's what it is. I 100% agree with you. I've said it myself numerous times, and even at the time that it happened, that, and I'm sure the Lightning feel like this internally, and they'll never come out and say it, obviously, but um, I think if they could go back in time to the expansion draft, I think that they would put they would protect Gord, uh, and allow Killorn to be exposed. I don't remember for the life of me who else was exposed, but I think it was Johnson, Tyler Johnson at the time, Boulay, and I don't know. I don't think Coleman was. I'm not entirely sure. No, because he was a free agent. Um, but having said that, I think that because Gord was versatile enough to where if we needed to move him towards the middle, he could grow into that role of playing down the middle, and he was able to do a lot of things. Whereas Killorn kind of doesn't really explore the ice as much as Gord is, um, and what you see from Pally. It's very vital to have a guy, a center, who could go in, win faceoffs, and also play strong in front of the net. And Clorn has done that at certain times, and you can see it in the points. But it hasn't been consistent. Yes, you see the points production, and yes, but it to me it happens in spurts, and I could be completely wrong in that regard, but that's just how I feel about it. Um, Another one that I'm not going to repeat the name because it's inappropriate, but they simply commented window closed. I think you're wrong. Um, this I don't know why everybody thinks because the Lightning lose one Stanley Cup after going in for while going for a third that this window's closed. Steven Stamkos said it, and I firmly believe he wasn't just saying that because just to put on a brave face after losing the Stanley Cup final. Um, the window's not closed. They're not done yet. Even I said it on. I've said it with Chris Masilli of Locked On Avalanche when we host the Locked On NHL show that that expect not next year because I think the Lightning will have a little bit of a setback year. I'm not saying that they're gonna not make the playoffs or not be in contention for the cup. I think we'll see them make it to the second round or even another conference final appearance. I don't expect them to go to the Stanley Cup final. That's pretty much along the lines of the expectations I had for them going into this year was that they were going to go back to the Eastern Conference Finals. Not sure if they were going to advance past that, but if they could get past whatever team they played in the conference finals, all bets are off. But yeah, I don't know where this idea is coming. I think, if you're a Lightning fan, you feel, oh my God, here we go. We're starting to see this team show their age, show the miles, um, and the window's closed, starting to close. No, it's not. No, it's not. The Lightning, in my opinion, I firmly believe that the Tampa Bay Lightning um, have at least two cups left in them before you start to see the downhill development of this team. And we'll continue to talk about that because uh, especially with downhill development, because that's why you got to stock up in the draft. And the Lightning have quite a few draft picks this year, and with their intentions of moving Alex Killorn, what a perfect time to get a couple of draft picks in return and stock up for future drafts, whether it be third, fourth, or fifth round. I don't think they could get a second, but if you get a late third, that's great. I would think if you want to get an early pick in a round, you're probably better off getting 4 and 5 from a team, depending on the team. So we'll talk about that in the coming days, coming episodes. So make sure to like and subscribe to the pod, give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, whether it be on an audio platform or on YouTube. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.